My name is Rick Lacuter, Dr. Rick Lacuter. I'm president of the ACVIM for another couple of days before becoming chairman of the board. And this is one of the very pleasurable jobs that the president gets to do just before moving to a position with a little more responsibility. The mission of our ACVIM is to enhance animal and human health. That's really important, animal and human health, by paying attention to the health of our animals and our environment, so we advance human health. And that's a fact that's lost, isn't it, with a lot of the funding agencies and the research that's done around the world. We focus on the human, and yet if we were to focus on animals just a little bit more, of course, we would get a direct and indirect benefit to people. So to go back to what I was supposed to be talking about, the mission of the ACVIM is to enhance animal and human health by advancing veterinary internal medicine through training, education, and discovery. Three very important words. But today, we're here to honor amazing animal survivors who beat the odds because of these advancements in veterinary internal medicine.
Nanook was diagnosed in late April of 2008, and when I first saw her, she came in through our emergency service, and she had, as they say in the movie, her chest contained lots of fluid. She was breathing with difficulty, and we thought, on x-rays we couldn't tell if there was a mass or not in the chest. There was lots of fluid. After draining the fluid, we could see clearly there was a mass, a tumor probably in her chest. We didn't know at that time it was a tumor, but there was a mass effect on radiographs after the fluid was removed. On ultrasound of the chest, we saw the mass clearly, and we saw big lymph nodes also in her chest, which none of that sounds really good, obviously. And after sampling the tumor and doing some special tests on the cells, we found out that this tumor was a tumor called histiocytic sarcoma. And histiocytic sarcoma, when you're a veterinarian or a veterinary oncologist anyways, you don't like to hear that name because it's a bad tumor. It's one of the bad guys that we see, unfortunately, on a regular occasion. At that point, when we confirmed it was histiocytic sarcoma in the chest, in the lung, in the lymph nodes, with the fluid, and at that time her quality of life was, after draining the fluid, she was okay, but she was reaccumulating fluid really quickly, so we had to drain it every other day or every day almost at the beginning. So I discussed with the Hemblins about the prognosis, which with this disease, when it's that advanced, if it's not operable and there are metastases, and we had evidence of metastasis in the lymph nodes, the prognosis is technically 1 to 3 months for survival, the average or the median survival time. And that's the number I gave them. But I did mention that we never know until we treat. And with many cancers, as bad as sometimes they look when they present, and it's the same in people, so I won't hope to be, as Dr. Lacuter said earlier, it's as much veterinary medicine as comparative medicine, and probably more comparative medicine that we do because it's very, very similar in people. And then we treated her every 3 weeks for a total of 8 times. And at probably the 12-week mark, when you saw the video earlier, was when she was in near complete remission. Complete remission meaning there's no evidence of detectable disease when we do radiographs or any other imaging tests. And at that time, the Hemblins told me that they called her the miracle. No, they told me they called her the miracle dog at week 3, actually, when she was no longer needing the draining of the chest. And I told them that I was probably hesitant to say miracle at that point because it was very early. And I always, any oncologist is always a little bit shy on the word cure or miracle. And we certainly cannot say cure at any point in time, but we're always staying optimistic. But we're at the 13-month mark now for a disease that had at first a 1 to 3 month prognosis.
Dr. Delaunay said we called her our miracle dog rather too early, but we did have a Christmas card from him last Christmas, and it was to us and our miracle dog. We think he's done wonders with her.
Here's Pistache. She's a sweet, sweet little cat. But she had a very feline disease, which turned out to be what we call squamous cell carcinoma. It's a disease we don't like to see, to diagnose, because it's a disease we currently still don't have lots of options for. And the mass was so big, it was occupying the whole space between her lower jaws, pushing on her tongue. Her tongue was like touching the palate. She had to keep almost her mouth open, couldn't really eat, drink. She was very, very thin at that time. And once we got it, and she had it in the lymph nodes also, which means also she had metastasis. And with this disease, the prognosis when it's inoperable in cats, and this is a disease that's very similar to what's called head and neck cancer or head and neck carcinoma in people. And with this disease, the prognosis when it's not operable is very often, in all the studies, 1 to 1.5, 2 months, somewhere in that range. We started treating her, and she responded pretty fast as well. And similar to Nanook, she got an alternating chemotherapy protocol that put her into what we call a complete remission, so complete disappearance of the tumor and the lymph nodes. And I'm not examining her right now, but I still don't feel anything there, and it used to be quite large. And she started putting on weight, eating better, and Ms. Birmingham just told me earlier that she looks like she's getting younger every day.
I first took her to my local vet because Pistache wasn't eating well, and I noticed that she'd been losing weight. And as soon as we see an animal's behavior changing, of course, usually there's a sign that we need to talk to our vets, right? She called me in the afternoon. I left the cat with my vet and called me and said, listen, you know, there's a big mass in her throat, and she's asleep right now. So, you know, if maybe this looks pretty serious and she's not a young cat, you know, maybe you want to consider euthanizing her. So I'm sorry because I'm mixed up with my French and English. And, you know, I thought about it and I said, let me think about it, but no, not right now. I want to find out a little bit more and just give it some thought. And if Pistache is really in bad shape, then we'll, you know, I'll make a decision. And I thought about it over the weekend and said, well, I'll give Pistache a chance, and called Dr. Delrimier, made an appointment with him, and I thought, well, at least we'll find out a little bit more about her, and you know, is there any chance? I figured at her age there was very little chance that I would have good news, but it was worth it. Pistache is a very curious and fun cat, and she'd been pretty good during her days when she was losing weight, and I thought, well, let's give her a chance.